So thanks to everyone for coming for our, I believe it's the final session for the conference. And I just wanted to start things off by saying, I think it's been a wonderful conference, and I just wanted to offer congratulations and thank you to Mindy and everyone at Ceres. My name's Chip Giller, and I'm going to be moderating this panel. I'm the founder and president of grist.org. We're an online environmental news service, for those of you not familiar with it. And we have a panel here of distinguished guests. I'm going to just lay out kind of what we're going to be talking about and how things are going to proceed. I'll do a brief introduction, and then we'll head off. The topic, as you all know, I believe, is the economic opportunities of climate change. And the transition to a green economy is going to create a lot of opportunities, but also be full of challenges and possibly be disruptive. And so I'm going to be asking the panelists here just to espouse on that topic. And so we're going to talk, I'm going to ask questions of the panelists for about 30, 35 minutes. And then I want to open it up to all of you for your questions, and I'll try to see who's raising their hands and call on you, because we really want to hear your voice. But please focus ask questions and don't give speeches. So we have three distinguished panelists here. Van Jones is the founder of Green for All, whose mission is to really bring about a more inclusive green economy. Ted Roosevelt IV is a managing director at Lehman Brothers and also chair of the Council on Climate Change at Lehman Brothers. And Michael Eckhart is the head of the American Council on Renewable Energy, whose goal is really to mainstream renewable energy in American society.
That's right.
Good, I got it all right. So I just wanted to start it off with a question to each of you, and then I'll spend a little time with more focus on each of you, but please jump in at any time if you want to build on someone's point. But I'll try to keep your answers, or if you could try to keep your answers pretty short too, that'd be wonderful. The first question I have for the group is, in your minds, as this transition's going on, as we move to our low carbon economy, who will be the winners in this new economy, and who will be the losers? So why don't we start with you, Van?
Well, first of all, I'm just glad to be here, and it's an honor, and I appreciate Mindy and others who went out of their way to make sure that I could be a part of the conversation. Winners and losers, I think, is one way to look at it. I think what we've got to figure out a way to do is to create win-win-win situations across the society, because otherwise, people are going to fight back. Here's the danger. The danger is that we proceed along a path that creates a sort of eco-elite that benefits from the transition. And you have a section of people who not only don't benefit, but actually are hurt. Who are those people likely to be? If you look at the bottom fifth of our society, the people who cannot afford to have significant increases in their energy bill, their food bill, their gas bill, their transportation costs, as we make this transition to a cleaner and greener society, if their costs go up, they will fight back. We saw in California a backlash alliance between polluters and poor people in 2006 when Proposition 87 hit the ballot. It was a great idea. The idea was that California was going to finally start taxing some of its oil companies to pay for clean energy, going to use money from oil to pay for the replacement for oil. Brilliant, beautiful, 70% in the polls, $40 million raised, Silicon Valley, Hollywood, Gore, Clinton, everybody's happy. But no people of color were included in the conversation to design the campaign. None of the low-income groups were a part of it. And the way that thing was designed, 6 weeks out from the election, the big polluters started spending money in the black community, the Latino community, low-income communities, telling us that this was going to kill us economically. Every black newspaper in the state had a back page ad with an African-American woman trying to put gas in her car, looking at the fuel pump like that. The NAACP came out against it and said that basically the eco-elite are going to put a green tax on poor people to pay for their hybrid revolution, and we can't afford it. The thing went down to defeat. It went from 70% in the polls to 45% in the polls and was defeated. This is California. California could have leapfrogged the whole world and created a clean energy fund like you've never seen. It was defeated in California. Now, the other 49 states, you know what's going to happen. So what we've got to do is to make sure that we build in equity, The way we do that, and then I'll pass over to my friends, it's very simple. Nobody talked about the jobs that were going to be created in a clean energy economy. It was all about energy independence and the bright green future and the polar bears. Nobody talked about the people whose kids don't have jobs and could have jobs in the solar industry. Nobody talked about the health improvement of closing these dirty power plants and putting up solar panels and windmills. Nobody talked about cutting people's energy bills by weatherizing and creating jobs doing that, by solarizing it and bringing grandma's energy bill down and giving your kid a job doing that. Nobody talked about the economic opportunity for ordinary people. And as a result, we had a backlash alliance between poor people and polluters, and we lost a huge opportunity in California. If we build inequity, if we say from the beginning, we want to build a green economy that's strong enough to lift people out of poverty, we want to have green pathways out of poverty, the communities that were locked out of the last century's pollution-based economy, we want them to be locked into the clean and green economy. The people who were left behind in the pollution-based economy and pushed down, we want them to be lifted up in this clean, green economy. If we create new icons of young people with hard, green hard hats and tool belts, and they've got the training and technology to go out and weatherize a country, we will have the majority that we need politically and economically to make this transition. And that's what I hope that we will actually do. We want everybody to be a winner in the green economy.
Cool.
So Ted, I'm curious on your perspective. I mean, it sounds like Van's saying there's a potential for we can all win in this green economy. Do you believe that's the case, or do you see distinctions?
Well, Van has said something that I think is extremely important. Generally, climate change policies should have three objectives. We want them to be environmentally effective, they have to be economically efficient, but they also have to be equitable. Americans have to feel that business, poor people, everybody is being treated fairly and that nobody is carrying a disproportionate share of the burden. And you articulated that, I think, absolutely brilliantly, and I agree. If the policies are not sustainable politically, they will fail. And we can't afford that risk. But I think we can do it, and I like what Van said. I think it's a terrific idea. If you look at what's going to happen, we're still going to have, in this economic transformation, climate change policies are going to drive a very large economic transformation. But we'll still have a transport sector. We'll still have an energy sector. We'll still have a finance sector. We'll still have a healthcare sector. But what's going to happen is, how do companies compete within those sectors? If you have CEOs who say, this is a strategic issue, and if I get it right and I'm ahead of the curve, and I make the right kinds of investments, and I seize the opportunities which are here, the markets will reward that CEO and his company's stock. But if he or she doesn't do that, and they put their heads in the sand, the markets will punish those companies. So the changes that are going to take place, I think, within the sectors that are going to be determine who the winners and losers are going to be. But it has to be done in an overall context of fairness. And the kinds of things that I hope Washington considers would be, pick a number. People who make less than $35,000, less than $40,000, when you put the policies in impact, they don't pay a Social Security tax, because climate change policies will result in an increase of the cost of energy. And poor people can't probably afford that. So we want to be very conscious of doing exactly what Van said.
Michael?
Great. It's hard to follow that. Well done, fellas. I would say the winners are those who participate. Simple as that. The whole act of energy efficiency and renewable energy and these kinds of new tech solutions is substitution of capital for fuel and labor, mostly fuel. So this is an investment activity, and it will create high-paying jobs. And maybe people are making $30,000 a year and struggling in the cities. You know, these kind of jobs are $40,000, $50,000 a year. These are trained jobs, so this is actually going to uplift. And I believe actually that renewable energy and energy efficiency are the low-cost solutions, not the high-cost. You know, a fellow from the National Gas Association challenged me the other day and said, you know, his industry can deliver electricity at 7 cents a kilowatt hour, and renewables is higher than that. I said, yeah, but I can guarantee 20 years from now what the price will be on any renewable energy power plant. Can you bid a guaranteed price on natural gas against me on an equal basis? And we had a very interesting discussion. He wasn't sort of a pushy guy. He said, that's very interesting. And we talked it through. And he figured if he had to bid against that, he'd be bidding 12 to 15 cents a kilowatt hour to guarantee for 20 years what natural gas-fired power will cost. And the same thing with coal. Our economists have convinced us that we can't predict these things, so don't worry about it. Well, we have a competitive advantage that we're not being able to use in the regulated marketplace. We offer a different set of economics. Sure, we might be high cost on day one, but over the life of a system where government and society and regulatory bodies should be looking, we are the low-cost solution. It is impossible for me to accept that the clean energy path is also not the economically superior path. You know, we're investing actively in energy efficiency and infrastructure and renewable energy. Active investment of capital means jobs. That's economic growth. You know, the stagnation path is the status quo of do nothing. The coal path is no more coal plants, no more jobs, no more investment. The status proposal is we get nothing. Our proposal is a renewed growth. So the winners are the participants. And those who want to not participate, fine, don't participate. It's a competitive marketplace, but the half who will do it. The second thing is, can we imagine how big this can be? And those who are stuck in the old mode can't see it. I remember in the late 60s, Stanford Research Institute, SRI, was hired by Texas Instruments to do a market study, a secret competitive market study of the future for handheld calculators. And their answer was an S-curve penetration to up to 30% of the slide rule market. Sometimes we can't see what technology is going to do for us. You know, that's right, 30% of the slide rule market. That's the future of electronics. That's terrific. I still have my K&E slide rule, I can tell you, in my basement. Isn't that a wonderful example of how it's just so hard to see what technology does to us? You know, if we have a clean energy path and we're healthier and we're all living to be 100 years old, how does that change things? If we're investing and employing people in the cities to rebuild the cities, I mean, this vision of green jobs is so fundamental. We're going to be building renewable energy power plants in the rural areas and energy efficient cities in the cities. That's the two pieces right there. Right? So we've got investment, jobs, economic growth, and the winners are those who participate.
So Van, I'd like to return to you, and I mean, this is going to be a question right to your wheelhouse now, but we hear a lot about green jobs now. You've been incredibly successful at sort of advancing this term. We have the presidential candidates talking about it. But could you actually define the term concretely? And then I have some follow-up questions to that. But, you know, it's almost becoming bandied about, this green jobs miracle, but what is it?
Yeah, no, it's great. You know, we in 2005, the United Nations came to the Bay Area to do their UN World Environment Day, and they did this thing called, their focus was green cities. And we asked Gavin Newsom, the mayor of San Francisco, if we could do a social equity track. They never had a social equity track before. And we were just, Gavin and I kind of grew up together in Bay Area politics. And I said, Gavin, you know what's going to happen. You're going to do this conference, and we're going to protest and say you excluded us. And you're going to, and so why don't we just skip that step, And he said, yeah, okay, that's good. So I was maturing, I just had a kid, So, so we did this thing, and we did this panel, and we called it Green Collar Jobs, Not Jails. And as our vision of, you've got all this work that needs to be done to retrofit a nation, to retrofit the planet. And you have all these people who need work, all these low-income kids, and we're just saying, can we connect the people who most need work to the work that most needs to be done? Can we just do that? And it's not like we're not spending money on these kids. We're just spending money locking them up, policing them, chasing them all around the neighborhood. It costs about $9,000 to $12,000 to take somebody who's not job ready, get them job ready, and train them to be a solar panel installer. It's a lot of money. It costs $50,000 to $70,000 to lock them up. So from our point of view, part of the challenge we have in the economy is we just don't do our cost accounting right. We aren't accounting for carbon. We aren't accounting for the real cost of the way we're mistreating this young generation of urban kids. And so we kind of put that out there as this kind of slogan, green collar jobs, not jails. And if you had Googled, as we did, the term green collar jobs, June of 2005, there were 17 hits for that term, green collar jobs. I think the Green Party in Australia put out a pamphlet. Oh, that's basically about it. And now, it's something like, I don't know, several hundred thousand, so somewhere in that range. So we didn't come up with the term, but we were able to kind of get it popularized. So then, people said, great, we love this term. We're making our speeches based on this term. We're making policy based on this term. What is this term? And we're like, that's a really good point. So we had to actually go and try to come up with our own definition. And now there's this big debate among researchers about what the actual definition is. So we've tried to keep our definition fairly broad. For us, it's a blue-collar job that's been upgraded to respect the environment. Okay, so it's vocational. There will be green jobs, but those the kind of green lab coat jobs, that kind of stuff. We call it, there's the PhDs and the PhDos. Okay, so we're focused on the PhDos, the skilled labor, those folks, people who are smart folks working with their hands, for us it's energy, renewables as well as weatherization, conservation, water, waste, food, all the organic food and agriculture. Those are the big 4 pillars for us. Other people keep saying we should add other stuff, so we probably will. What I think the importance of the term is it gives us an opportunity to talk about the transition we have to make in a way where we honor what people most are concerned about today. And the people are desperately concerned about the economy, and they're desperately concerned about the fact that their kids are coming out of schools and they're not prepared to work, and they don't have a good economic future. And I'll say this as I go back to your next question. We can go to conferences like this, and it's great. And I bet a lot of you guys are CEOs or COs or whatever. And, we should do this, we should do that. Bring your HR people in here. And they will tell you very quickly, if you haven't said it yourself, where are we going to find the people who are trained and have the values to do all this great stuff? We don't have a big green-collar workforce development policy in this country. We don't have the green-collar workforce to do all this work. The President of the United States could sign the best carbon bill you could ever think of tomorrow. You could have a polar bear as president, okay? And let the polar bear write the legislation, so you know it's going to be good, okay? But the next day, the president is not going to put up one solar panel. The president is not going to weatherize one building. The president's not going to make one wind farm. Millions of ordinary people have to be trained to do that. They have to be prepared to do that. And we're not doing that right now. So that's our big push, is to get the job training going.
So I have one follow-up question before moving to Michael, and that is, do you view this as a jobs creation program, or is it more typically what happens in the economy, sort of people moving from one sector to another sector? Because I hear, green collars creation programs. So do you think are there going to be net more jobs?
Yeah. Well, it's going to be both. First of all, just in the abstract, a green and clean economy should be relatively more labor-intensive, relatively less energy-intensive. Okay, so just theoretically, there should be a net growth in jobs. And that's very, very important. People have done studies now where they say, how many jobs are created per kilowatt hour, that kind of stuff. And it just turns out that the more distributed your energy systems are, the more labor-intensive. Therefore, more of the money that you're paying is going to workers as opposed to big power plants and that kind of stuff. So that's good in a general sense. But the fact that there's also going to be some convection, there's going to be people who have jobs right now, they're going to have to get their skills upgraded. There are going to be people in sectors now that are getting smaller, they're going to have to jump ship. That convection moment is a very important moment in the life of the country, because you're hitting reset. And this year's the 40th anniversary of Dr. King's assassination. He was 39 years old when he was killed. So he's been gone now longer than he was when he was here. I'm 39. So Dr. King never saw his 40th birthday. If Dr. King were here, he would say to all of us, I marched, bled, and died to racially integrate a pollution-based economy, a poison-based economy. The buses we were trying to integrate were pollutant. The lunch counters we were sitting at, it wasn't organic tofu sandwiches. Right? I mean, that was the economy of the last century. And I did everything I could to try to get it racially integrated, make it fair, get equal opportunity there. This generation, people who are here, get a chance to create a new, clean, and green economy from scratch. Okay? There's going to be convection from scratch. There's no Bull Connor saying you can't bring in low-income people. You can't bring in African Americans. You can't bring in Asians, Latinos, Native Americans. You can't bring in women. You can't bring in lesbians and gays. We get a chance to use this convection moment to recommit ourselves to building a green and clean economy that honors the best wisdom of the last century, that build a green and clean economy that has a place in it for everybody. So it's not just that we are going to be adding jobs. We are going to be adding jobs. We're going to be switching jobs. But we also get a chance to rethink how we want to bring people into the workforce and have green opportunity for everybody. It's in our hands to do that.
Great, good. So Michael, switching a little bit, I want to talk a little bit about technologies.
Okay.
And you know, even as there's going to be green-collar jobs and green PhD jobs, can you talk what in your mind are sort of the technologies on the horizon that are going to be sort of transformative and disruptive and then, you know, normal in 20 years in the renewables sector?
Sure, I'll try to make this not techie boring, but it is exciting what's going on in technology. What we have today is the first and second generation of renewable and energy efficiency technologies. We're dealing with the first and second generation from 30 years of research and development that started big time in the 70s, as you all know. We, ACORE, have deemed that to have been phase one, and we've deemed the current phase to be phase two. Phase one ended in the year 2000, we so deemed, and said, okay, that was the R&D phase where we weren't commercializing anything, we were just working on it. Trying hard to commercialize, but no real markets there. Now, post-2000, let's shift into a 25-year period, and we line this up with the Energy Future Coalition's call for 25% renewable energy by 2025, and Reed Detchen's here heading that effort. So we aligned our policy initiative with theirs philosophically. So we're in phase two right now. Well, what is phase two? It's this 25-year period. We're implementing the technologies we have and perfecting them for commercial deployment. So you've got wind turbines getting up towards 5 megawatts each, very commonly at 1.5 to 2.5 megawatts each. But in the wind business, it's all about scale. Can you get it up higher, and can you get a bigger swept area per machine? And that's where your economies of scale come from. And this is really what you call big boy engineering. This is no kidding around. This is no different than Boeing building a bigger jet. These are big machines with tremendous stresses on them. The technology used to be the blades. The technology in winds today are the gearboxes and the main bushings and bearings because of the forces on that. For that machine to sit up there in the weather like that year after year and withstand those forces takes machinery that's at the leading edge of material science, at the leading edge of engineering, at the leading edge of quality manufacturing. There can be no flaws in these devices. They have to be perfect, or they're going to blow up there or just break down. You know, then you take solar energy. The other second in wind power is offshore. And of course, that's putting a machine in the marine environment. The average Navy ship lasts 20 years. It just simply wears out in that environment. So you've got to use different metallurgy, again, material science. And then you've got to figure out how to anchor these things to the bottom of the ocean. And that turns out to be very expensive. Well, there's some real skills in the oil industry about that. So it's a transfer of technology as well as a development of technology. But clearly, if we can locate these off our shores out in the ocean and bring in the power, that changes the economics. And we've got one case in Cape Wind trying to get done right now, Bellwether Project. And let's stay in the ocean for a minute. How much more dense is water than air? 871 times, it turns out. Okay, you know the difference between standing... I knew you knew that already. You know the difference between standing on a windy beach and going in body surfing, okay? The forces acting on you are a little different. Well, there's the 871 times. So imagine, if you would, the Gulf Stream going by at about 2 or 3 knots. That would be like a wind turbine up in the air in 2,000-mile-an-hour wind, okay? Because it's 2 or 3 times that 871. The density of water, or the density of energy moving past a turbine out there, I mean, you see the Hoover Dam on a little river and see how the power that comes out of that. Imagine tapping the energy that's in the Gulf Stream and bringing that in on cables to the East Coast. You could power the entire eastern half of the United States right out of the Gulf Stream if we learned how to do it right. And it's within our technical capabilities to do that. That is huge. Another big mind-bending kind of thought would be geothermal. You know, there's only 3 renewable energies that we deal with. There's only 3. The sunlight coming down from the sun. It's not heat, by the way, it's light. Secondly, there's geothermal heat coming out of the earth. And third, there's a little push-pull with the moon, moving the tides. That's it, folks. That's the whole deal. But there is plenty of it. There's so much solar energy coming down to it. As you know, it's 1,000 times more than we need if we can learn how to tap it. Well, let's think geothermal. I say geothermal energy is the $3 billion a year R&D program that we never started, because we were looking for low-hanging fruit back in the 70s, the easy stuff out in Nevada and Utah and the stuff that's up close to the surface. As you all know, there's a geothermal ring of fire in the Pacific where it all comes up to the surface. Well, let's put that out of our mind and instead look at how much energy is in the center of the Earth. I say this is the biggest engineering challenge we've ever not faced. We didn't do it. We skipped it. We went on by. Let me ask you this. How come it is that the oil companies stopped drilling at about 10,000 feet? Because the drill bits melt at 10,000 feet. There's heat down there, and it's within a distance we can get to. The question is, if you're not having oil and gas coming up the hole, you're just having steam or heat coming up, that's a lower economic value. How can we make that work? Again, I think this is the multi-billion-dollar big thing. If we have a renewable energy opportunity to literally displace coal and stop burning coal, it's geothermal.
So, Michael, I'm going to turn to Ted in a second, but if you could wave your wand and could get passed in D.C. 2 pieces of legislation or 2 regulations passed, what would those be? And what's holding things back right now?
Well, that's a beautiful question, and it's nothing. It's nothing near. We've been so focused on getting things started, we're shooting ourselves in the foot in a way, policy-wise. How do we get to 25% renewable energy by 2025? We need policies that scale to that level. You know, tax credits don't scale to that level. Yes, we need them. We want them renewed. We need them renewed in Washington today, and we need incentives and regulations at the state level. But fundamentally, to get where we all really want to go, we need policies that scale. That would be like, just to make one up, how about if every building code in America made it illegal to put up a roof that was not PV? You can't build a building that doesn't have a toilet. You can't build a building that's not hooked to the utility. How about if it's in the building code? How about if it's socially irresponsible to put up a roof that's not contributing electricity to the system? If every roof in America was made out of PV today, we wouldn't have any power plants. You know, it's that close as to what we could achieve. Fundamentally think through how we get to a whole society run on nature's energy. And it's a whole different set of rules and incentives and tax treatments that are different than what we designed for oil, gas, coal, and nuclear. Gosh bless them, right? So it's a fundamental rethinking of all these pieces. It's a job we need to do.
So 1, 2, can you name just 2? I mean, I get the big concepts, but can you name just 2 quick things?
Well, climate. The climate legislation, number 1, which will pull forward all of the low-carbon, non-carbon solutions, and most of renewables are low-carbon, non-carbon. That would be number 1. And out of that, or as a part of that, the idea with the cap-and-trade auction system that we all want to put in place and the $150 billion that will then be assembled that people are wondering about how they're going to spend, from our point of view, from the renewable energy point of view, remember it's all about capital investment. That's what makes this happen. That's the difference from talk and result is capital investment. A standing 20% investment tax credit for low-carbon technologies funded by that $150 billion. Okay? Just don't have to. Corporate America will fund all the R&D we need if there's a 20% tax credit on permanent, not 2-year sunset. Permanent, just lay it out there and let the American imagination and the American worker and the American scientists and the worldwide scientists, let the globe go after this thing and transform the American infrastructure.
So Ted, turning to Wall Street, could you just talk, at the start, just broadly, what does climate change mean to a firm like Lehman Brothers? And are we really seeing investments, low-carbon investments at the moment?
Yeah, well, I think most of Wall Street, and certainly at Lehman Brothers, go back to something I said earlier. You're going to see, if we get the right climate change policies in place, a huge economic transformation. How big? It's going to dwarf globalization. It's going to affect every business, every company in this country. And that's the good news. In order to get that, what we're going to need is to have a price put on carbon, and business believes that that price is going to steadily increase over time, so they have the ability to make the long-term capital investments that they need to make. We at Lehman Brothers, and I think every other Wall Street, is seeing every day somebody coming into our office and saying, I've got a new idea around how we can make a plug-in hybrid. And it's not one guy doing this or one woman. It's half a dozen people coming in virtually every day, ideas like this. We have new ideas coming to us about carbon capture sequestration, new ideas around sequestration, new ideas around how you might capture carbon. We're seeing incredible ideas around how people can lower the costs of PV, photovoltaic, different kinds of technologies, and the creation of joint ventures in China so they can take advantage of inherent low manufacturing costs. So we want to be, in terms of public policy, we want to have the intellectual ideas originate, but maybe we're going to manufacture them in China. And so one of the most exciting things that happens to me, every day I'm listening to a new technology, and then I have to scurry back, talk to friends in academia, hire consultants. How do you really understand this? What does this mean? Are we on the right path or not? And we'll get it wrong sometimes, but sometimes we're going to get it right. But that's the power of the market, and that's what Wall Street, I think, can do. And it's extremely encouraging. And when I first took this job, I thought I was going to see a little bit of this. I'm spending a huge amount of my time listening to new ideas. They're out there. And the other thing that we're seeing is that investors will call up people in our asset management division, and they will say, well, I'm going to have a liquidity event in 3 months' time, and that's going to mean another $500 million. I want you to invest it in green technology. Well, it's great that they're having that kind of liquidity event, but what's even better is that that's where they want to invest it. And it's hard for us right now to meet the investor demand. The investor demand now exceeds what we can actually give to them. So we don't want to give them something that we think is likely to fail. We've got to act as good bankers and try to come up with good ideas. But when you see the market working this way, it's tremendously encouraging, tremendously rewarding. And we're not talking about something that's going to take place in 50 years. You're going to start seeing these technologies come on board in 5 to 10 years.
I wanted to ask this question sort of to honor our host here, Ceres, and to put you a little bit on the hot seat. But I noticed that Lehman Brothers scored.
I can't imagine you will put me on the hot seat. How are you going to do that?
Yeah, I noticed Lehman Brothers scored, I think, close to the bottom, 4 out of 5. Ceres put out a report on investment banks recently, and Lehman Brothers didn't rate very highly. So I'm wondering, what was that about, and what is Lehman Brothers doing to change, to react to that so that it scores higher in the next report?
It's a fair question. It's a very good question. Lehman Brothers is at once both an old firm, we're founded in 1850, and we're a relatively new firm. We were spun off from Shearson American Express, which was an unhappy marriage, in 1994. And we determined that we were going to do things differently. One of the first things that we focused on was we said, what's our most important asset? It's our people. How do we get better and more people in? So we said, we're going to take a lead, and I think we did in Wall Street. We want to make sure that we've got the kind of diversity across the board, because that's how you're going to attract brains. We want to make sure we've got gender diversity, we've got racial diversity, and we want to open ourselves up completely to the gay community. And if we can do that in a convincing way, we'll get more brains into the firm. That was our first serious sort of social initiative. And we put on a backseat, deliberately, environmental policy. I wasn't entirely happy with it, but I certainly understood and I supported this. Let's get the very best brains that we can into the firm. And this is going to be one of the ways we're going to do it. We've gotten a tremendous number of awards for what we've done in terms of our outreach, in terms of diversity, gender, outreach to the gay community. And I'm immensely proud of that. We've now turned to environmental issues. We've hired a terrific sustainability officer. And we're in the process of putting in, I think, very good policies which will drive what we start to do specifically. We're actually doing a fair amount and beginning to put that in place. I don't want to say what our score next year will be on the Ceres report. I think it's going to be better, but we're going to really get there.
Well, we have 25 minutes left. I'm going to ask these guys each one more question, then I'll turn it to the crowd. Van, could you give some concrete examples of where green-collar jobs, maybe it's in Oakland, maybe it's elsewhere, where they are taking off? And you know, like I have friends working in Newark and with the Dodge Foundation, really trying to partner with the mayor there and really get this thing going. And they're running into some stumbling blocks. You know, again, I feel like everyone's excited by the concept, but when you actually get into the mechanics of it, it's pretty challenging. So,
that's true.
So some concrete examples would be helpful in illustrative.
That's good. I mean, part of it is, you're talking about the kind of venture capital, people who are trying to project where they should invest their money. We're in a similar situation. We're trying to figure out where to invest the workforce training dollars to try to meet the opportunities that are arising. Some of the more successful examples, though, are places like the Bay Area. Our solar industry was, starting to cook with gas, well, cook with light, and things were moving forward. the problem was, if you live in Marin County, you've drunk the Kool-Aid on the Green Revolution, you want to put up solar panels. We were in a period this time last year, you had to wait 2 to 6 months to get a solar panel on your house. Not because you didn't have the right policy environment or the right companies, but because they didn't have enough workers. So you have 6 months delays on installation because they didn't have enough green-collar workers. We went to our community college leaders in our city council and we said, you know, this doesn't make any sense. We got these kids that don't need jobs. We have all this work that needs to be done. Can we put it together? Our city council said yes. We created something called a Green Jobs Corps. There's something called Solar Richmond, which is a really great training model that takes, you know, folks who have barriers to employment, gets them job ready, gets them to training. People are now getting hired. Now on the East Coast, you're seeing a lot in wind. There's going to be a whole big takeoff in wind. So we were just out there talking to mayors. We were out in New Bedford, just up the road from here, talking to community leaders up there about getting the job force ready for the jobs in wind that are coming. The other thing that is important to recognize is this winter, we're going to have tremendous problems. We think we've seen a lot of people lose their homes because of the subprime. You have a whole other section of people that are barely housed, and when the energy bills this past year were as high as they were, people were getting pushed to the edge. We're very concerned that without a crash weatherization program to really try to help people weatherize their homes, solarize their homes, we're going to be seeing a lot more people losing their homes because they can't stay housed in warm houses. And what we've been saying, you know, the whole time, drafty buildings make cold people and a hot planet, okay? The low-hanging fruit for energy conservation and also for improving the quality of people's lives is to weatherize these homes because people are spending 20 to 30% too much of their money because their homes are not energy efficient. If you teach somebody how to weatherize a home, that's a green pathway out of poverty. You don't know how to double pane, if you don't know how to double pane glass, you can join a union. You can become a glazer. It's a green pathway out of poverty. So our concern is, again, you have places now where the green-collar rubber's starting to meet the road, where the job training, the job seekers, and the job creators are coming together. The key every place is to actually get everybody at the table early. That's the key. You guys are the job creators. Very few job creators in the green economy are going down to the local community college and saying, these are the kind of workers we want. You give them to me, I'll hire them. That's critical. Very few of the national organizations really focus on federal policy. We worked with Speaker Pelosi and got something called the Green Jobs Act of 2007 passed as a part of the energy bill. Very simple bill. It just says to the Department of Labor, you're already pushing out money to do job training all across the country. We're going to authorize $125 million for you to start a green job training program in this country. It passed. We're now working to get the money appropriated. The idea is that runs hand in hand with the work that Mike is doing to try to get those tax credits, production tax credits and others for the wind and solar industry, so that as those industries take off, there's some job training dollars. You guys are trying to meet a world-class challenge. You're not being given a world-class workforce. Okay, so Congress needs to play a role in getting the money to our community colleges, to our vocational schools, to give you the workers that you need. So, so that's where we're headed. I just want to say one more thing. Everybody in this room, you know, those of you who are employers, you have the opportunity to help us figure this out. There's not a single person in this room that doesn't have a mentor. When you were in your early 20s and your late teens, somebody reached out to you, saw something special in you, and opened a door for you. And a lot of times, I think we make this way too complicated. How do we get the green economy take off? How do we get people the opportunity? Yeah, there's federal stuff. There's the need to pull together these local tables that we're doing, and we're proud of that. But when we see real stuff happen, it's when a business owner says, I'm committed to this. I want to make sure next summer we bring some kids through this organization. Maybe we can't hire them, but we're going to bring them through, we're going to expose them, we're going to spend some time, we're going to make sure that they know there's a future out here for them in this green economy. That's when we see real stuff happening, because other people in the company get excited. HR gets excited. The worst thing that happened to us was when we had a bunch of people come through our training program in Richmond, and the CEOs were excited, and the HR people weren't, and they didn't hire those graduates, because it was easier for them to hire kids coming out of Berkeley and Stanford than to give a chance to a kid in the neighborhood, even though that kid had come through a tough 9-week program. I think that the way that we're going to get the green-collar job revolution to really take place, yeah, it's going to be top-down from the feds, it's going to be bottom-up from communities, but it's really going to be inside-out, an inside-out commitment that nobody in this room wants to be here next year without being able to not only report on how much carbon you cut, but also how many kids you help to become a part of this thing we're trying to do.
Ted, can I build a little something Dan was saying? With the subprime crisis and so forth, in 2 minutes or less, could you address whether the sort of economic downturn in the country is going to, does it slow also our advance toward a clean economy?
It's a very good question, and I'm afraid I'm going to be a little bit bearish about this. Wall Street is obviously filled with lots of people who have different views of markets. That's why some people buy and some people sell. My own view is that the subprime crisis, which is a very serious one, and is going to lead exactly to the things that Van was talking about. Even President Bush now gets it, where he says things are tough and that they're difficult. So they got to be damn difficult if he gets it. Now that's me saying that. That's not Lehman Brothers saying that. All right. What I'm afraid of, though, is that the subprime crisis has unmasked, if you will, a deeper malaise, a deeper economic malaise. Now I'm sounding like Jimmy Carter. What I worry about is that the rest of the world understands that we've been living beyond our means, and therefore they don't want to hold dollars. And you're going to see a continual erosion in the value of the dollar. And the remedy to that, unfortunately, is not one that we can put in place now. We've got to get through subprime. Ultimately, it's going to be tighter fiscal policy and tighter monetary policy. And in order to do that, we're going to have to think very carefully about health insurance, safety nets, Social Security, so that we can do that and we can bring along the lower 1/3 of our population in terms of economic strength. If we don't do that, I worry that it's going to fail. So what I worry about is that we start to have really good climate change policies, but they're not viewed as being equitable. And we also have an international equity question, which I haven't talked about, or we haven't talked about, in terms of bringing China and India on board. Those are going to be big and important. If we have a conflation between protectionism and climate change policy, that's not going to be good. And so therefore, again, go back to what Van says, we've all got to get in here together. We've got to put our shoulder to this wheel, but it's got to be done equitably. And if we don't do this equitably, we're not going to succeed. But we have to succeed. It's just too darn important to get it right. And that's one thing that the American people will do if they understand what the choices are. Given leadership, giving a commitment, we can get it done.
So final question, Michael, before we turn it open to the group. Another concept around equity, in a sense, is, can you defend subsidies for renewables? We in the green community spend a lot of time complaining about subsidies for other forms of energy. I'm wondering if you could mount a short defense for subsidies for renewables.
Absolutely. There are no subsidies for renewables in our economy today. This is an absolute untruth. You compare a few little tax credits to incentivize early markets in wind power and solar. Those are incentives. And if you're a supply-side economist, those are valves on the flow of capital. Those are not subsidizing renewable energy. Those are accelerating capital investment in a socially attractive area. There's no subsidies there. Subsidies are the U.S. government and local governments paying for the highways that run the cars that buy the oil. And it's your tax money paying for thank you. That's a real subsidy. We're paying for the oil companies just selling at a profit when we're providing the roads and some of the cars. This is a subsidy. I served in the United States Navy. How many of you served in the military? All right, a lot of people. We all understand that we were out there keeping the shipping lanes open. That's the function of the Navy, outside of delivering some aircraft carriers whenever we got a problem. But the basic function of the U.S. Navy is to, right in our Constitution, is to keep the shipping lanes open. So there's a subsidy for you. Those are the real subsidies in our system. A few incentives to get us going or not. Let me actually pick up on Ted's point. We're a little controversial. I actually think that the slow growth economy is to our advantage. We have a winning hand sitting in front of us. And the reason is that if we had high economic growth, the coal and nuclear people would have an argument that load growth was such we had to commit to these big power plants. If load growth is flat to low, they have no justification for their projects, and we can incrementalize them to death. We can build one wind farm, one solar panel after another. You know, you own a company, you're a VP of sustainability in any company in America, you can put solar panels on your roof, you are displacing coal 1 kilowatt hour at a time. That's to our advantage. Secondly, in a slow growth economy, interest rates will be held down. We are substitution of capital for fuel. It's all about the cost of capital on the economics of renewable energy. Interest rates double, the cost of wind power just doubled. It's all about that. In the first 20 years, the loans are paid off. And so low interest rates in a low growth economy, again, is to our advantage. So we have greater market opportunity and we have lower cost of capital, both to our advantage. Third, we're not alone. This is a global thing going on, and there are strong markets in Germany and Spain, in Italy and France, all across Europe. China is coming on strong with adopting renewable energy. And so our industries and the advancement of the technologies and coming down the cost curve, all these things will be pulled forward independent of our economy. It's going to go forward anyway. But I would submit that the slow growth economy we face in the next couple of years with low interest rates is a great opportunity we should not miss.
Dissension, okay. It's good.
Yeah. All right, good.
So for those of you who have questions, why don't you stand up? I might have trouble seeing you, but yeah.
Wait for the microphone, because we can't hear you.
Bill Bowie, and I'm going to repeat a question. This is for Van Jones that I posed at the Green Jobs workshop yesterday, which is that green jobs are really concentrated in an area that a lot of them have a high carbon intensity associated with them, because a lot of them are, you know, infrastructure projects. So I guess, you know, one of my questions is, how do you factor in carbon intensity, since we've got such a short time frame to lower the carbon that we're putting out in our economy? How do you factor the carbon intensity of green jobs into your definition of green jobs? I'll leave it at that.
Now help me understand your question. Why do you say that it's a carbon intensive thing? It's not carbon intensive to put up solar panels or to weatherize a home. So you must have a definition of, you must have been a part of a conversation I wasn't in yet. So bring me up to speed, and then let me try to answer the question.
Okay, that replacing a lot of infrastructure, solar panels in and of themselves have a carbon intensity embedded in them.
Right.
Wind turbines have a carbon intensity embedded in them. So the jobs associated with those of sort of transforming our economy have a carbon intensity embedded in them. Right. So well, in other words, how do we minimize the carbon intensity of this transformation that's associated with the growth of green jobs?
Well, we're going to have to spend some money and some carbon to get us from where we are to where we want to be. And that's just the bottom line. On the back end, we're going to be saving money, and we're going to be saving in terms of the amount of carbon that we put up. But there is going to be some intensity to get us there. But I don't see the alternative is to either just shut everything off, which I think most people would object to, or to move to spend the money and to spend the carbon. I am very interested. There are some people who are in the Bay Area who are much more kind of off-the-grid people, who I'm just now meeting. And they have really interesting ideas, but we have not focused on ideas that are, you know, as interesting as that. Our view is that we're probably not going to be able to roll up the highways. We're probably not going to move everybody into teepees. And so what we've got to do is figure out some way to retrofit what we've got. And while we do that, we want to do it in a way that's fair to everybody and includes everybody.
Another question from a teepee lover, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah, you right there.
Hi, I'm Bob Ward from Risk Management Solutions. All of the conversations so far about opportunities have been about mitigation, reduction of greenhouse gases, which is clearly important. But are there economic opportunities in adaptation? Do your green-collar jobs include the people who are going to have to design and build flood defenses, for instance, around your major coastal cities? Just wondered whether, is it an opportunity, or is it just going to be costs we have to bear?
Well, let me tell you how we thought about it. We haven't thought about it in that way. we've thought about it from the point of view of we have the need for both equal protection and equal opportunity in the transition. So what you're talking about, we kind of put in the domain of equal protection. We want to make sure that we don't have any more Katrinas, where we have a wonderful free market evacuation plan for an American city. If you've got a credit card and a functioning car, you can get out. Otherwise, you're kind of left to sink or swim, literally. So we think that's bad, and we think that all of the work, we don't use the term adaptation so much, we use the term preparation, because in our neighborhoods that makes more sense. We've got to prepare for what's coming. And so we do fight for that and push for that, but we haven't actually made an economic argument for that. We haven't said, you know, there's going to be a lot of jobs, like you said, in building dikes or whatever. We've tried to preserve the enthusiasm around economic development for not the minimizing of the pain, but maximizing the gain. And so we tend to talk about green jobs in that positive, you know, let's move into the new economy framework. But we'd be open to it if you could maybe teach us a little bit more.
Well, let me just, I think that as you, John Holdren expressed it, professor at the JFK School in Harvard, expressed it very well. There are only 3 responses, John says, to climate change: mitigation, adaptation, and suffering. We want to do a lot less of the third and more of the first 2. And you're going to see clearly some adaptation taking place, and the financial industry will help drive it. Let's take the insurance industry. You got all these houses that are on the coast of the United States, very vulnerable to increased storm intensity, vulnerable to increased storm surges, et cetera. They're going to have to adapt. They're going to either have to move the houses inland, or they're going to have to make them a whole lot stronger so they can resist storm surges, flooding, et cetera. That's adaptation. There are going to be jobs created by that, and we're going to have to respond to, because we're not going to see, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to mitigate enough to avoid any of the impact of a warming planet.
I'll have a small comment, too. I think certainly there's mitigation, but that's the downside story. Nobody likes that. It's all adaptation. It's changing society as we know it. Imagine 100 years from now what society will look like if the rule is we're not going to be using oil, gas, coal, or nuclear. That's argumentative, that last one. But if we're not using fossil fuels, just imagine what that looks like. It is physically a different place. We do things differently. We don't get on airplanes and go to conferences as much. We have high tech that brings us all together in different ways. It's a different society, and it's all about investment and adaptation and change. We're accelerating change because of a forcing function of climate change. It's causing us to do something we would do slower, faster, because it's adapting technologies that take us forward in society. We're going to do what it would have taken 300 years to do, we're going to do in 50 years. That's how I view it. You know, we're going to do solar and renewables and efficiency and high tech and clean tech and all these things. This is all normal trends. I think all we're doing is accelerating them dramatically. So adaptation.
All right, we have time for 2 more questions, I think.
There's a young woman in the back there.
Young woman in the back?
Okay, young woman in front.
Yeah.
Wearing white.
Yeah.
My name is Morgan Simon, and I guess it's a combination pitch and a question. So one is to say I'm part of a group that's been advising Green for All on how investors can get involved in the green jobs movement. And I guess if there's any investors in the room who are as excited about this as we are and want to get involved, please feel free to get in touch with Green for All or with me, Morgan, at endowmentethics.org. We're really excited to see how investors can really play a role in this, and wanted to ask for Theodore and for Van of what might be some ideas of how investors can contribute to the creation of green jobs.
You're the Wall Street dude, man.
Well, I think what you're seeing is that investors believe that there's in the economic transformation, and the investors are saying, show us product, show us ways in which we can make money, but we want to also achieve a social good, or we want to enhance or accelerate social policy. So the way I think investors should do is exactly what that example that I gave, $500 million liquidation event. Investors should be very aggressive in talking to people saying, I want to invest in green technology. It's important to me, but I want to make money. You got to have those 2 criteria. You don't want to invest and lose money, then you don't have any impact. You want to do it so you make money. And if you keep that criteria and you don't take shortcuts, because it's green, don't take shortcuts. Be rigorous in your due diligence, be demanding in your information, and make sure that you don't get involved in what we'll call a green bubble. We've seen asset prices of some things. I see, for example, a Chinese solar company before the recent correction in the Chinese market that was trading at 60 times earnings. Kind of rich. I'm not sure that's when you want to buy a solar company, even though they got some interesting future. So continue to do your due diligence and be smart about it.
As you jump in, one thing I think is really, really critical too is that those of you who do set some of the criteria and deal with some of the screening and that kind of stuff, you know, a much more robust commitment around equity, I think, is now appropriate. We're having a conversation now with the people who, with the U.S. Green Building Council. They do the LEED standard, L-E-E-D, that's like for all the green building stuff. You know, we said, look, you guys have a checkbox if you build near a bus stop, because that's better for the environment. Can there be a checkbox if you create green jobs for disadvantaged people? Is there some way for us to start baking in and building into our conception of what green even is? From my point of view, if we don't talk about a green economy, a green economy is an economy. We don't have any throwaway resources. We don't have any throwaway species. We also don't have any throwaway children or neighborhoods either. That there's got to be a way for us to think about how we fight pollution and poverty at the same time so that we have a stable, steady transition. We don't want to create a backlash against all of this because some people got left out. And I'm going to say everybody in this room has the opportunity to include more people. Everybody that we don't include in the economic benefit of the transition to the green economy will be targeted, will be organized, and will be mobilized by the opponents of this transition. I guarantee it. It's already happening. Our work right now with the NAACP, the Congressional Black Caucus, we already are getting people saying, I'm getting checks written by coal. They're coming after the Congressional Black Caucus, trying to get the Congressional Black Caucus to be on the other side of everything that we're talking about. We have got to be more inclusive. And if we can build it into the criteria so it's not an add-on, so much the better.
Well, what happened in California, unfortunately, just happened in New York. You heard about congestion pricing. This was a question about the have-nots and the haves. I'm a great fan of Mike Bloomberg, but I think maybe this could have been handled a little bit differently. And when you had poor people in the Bronx saying, hey, this discriminates against us, you knew that congestion pricing was doomed. You also had not exactly strong leadership on the part of the New York State legislature.
Michael, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I would like to add to it. The question was on Wall Street and how to get Wall Street functional on this. And let me point out the people dimension to it rather than the computer spreadsheet dimension to it. You know, what I like about Wall Street in our work, we convened a conference called the Renewable Energy Finance Forum Wall Street in June at the Waldorf Astoria. We didn't know if it would be successful. It's crammed with blue suits, and they're all expensive suits, too. These are people that manage money. And what's happened is our industry started making money. And if those guys can make money, well, the attitude of Wall Street is, I can do better than that guy. You know? So we show examples of money being made, and they pack the room to learn how money is being made. What I like about it is that people on Wall Street can choose to spend their time any way they want. They don't work by the hour. They work by the deal. And they choose what deals they're working on. That's the key dimension. If we can show them how to make money, and we have, they will choose to spend their careers doing this. It's Ted, it's John Cavalier, Credit Suisse First Boston, it's Neil Auerbach, who just left Goldman Sachs to join John to form Hudson, raise a couple $1 billion. These people are choosing to spend their time in our industry making money, and they don't waste their time. So there are some leaders. In other words, let me go to the point of leadership. We're really led now by leaders. This industry didn't have leadership 10 years ago. There's a wealth of leadership, so it's not a bubble. This isn't like this isn't a consumer movement where they can be fooled and then sell the stock later. This movement's being led by high-level professionals who are choosing to devote their careers to this, and they do not lose. These are people that make money no matter what they do because they create their own successes. Nancy Floyd created Nth Power in 1994, way before the wave. Look how many VC funds and all the Kleiner Perkins and everybody that's in this space now. It's not just the pioneers. It's people that really know how to build companies and make money and finance projects. That's the exciting part I see on Wall Street, the people that are in this.
So, Van, you wanted to add something quickly.
That's good. Just 10 seconds. We are right now working to get the Green Jobs Act of 2007 appropriated. We got it authorized in December, and now we're working to get it appropriated. It would be incredible to have business leaders stand up and say, we want our community colleges, our vocational schools, to be able to train people to help us get this done. So anybody who's interested in helping us to get Congress to put the money now where their mouths are on green jobs, please help us, greenforall.org. No numerals, all letters, greenforall.org. Thank you.
Michael wants 10 seconds now, too.
Yeah, I just want to point out that at lunch we introduced Sherry Ulf, who's working with me and heading our higher education committee. Just raise your hand, Sherry. This is really exciting stuff. So anybody that wants to work on education, which we think is really the cornerstone of this immediate transformation, I'd like to meet with these two guys and get something going here today, because this is the number one thing. This is the number one thing we can do. So.
I actually want to ask, expected all of you, but to this point exactly. In my work with ACORE, I work with employers and colleges and universities, community colleges, to try and forge these connections that are necessary between job makers, job creators, and the colleges and universities and vocational schools that will train this green workforce that is needed. But the objection I run into from both sides all the time is, we can't commit yet because there isn't the supportive policy in place that will allow us to make these commitments. That's both from the employer side. They can't commit to programs and funding for schools to create and implement these programs. And on the other side, the universities and colleges, the worst thing you can do is train employees for jobs that don't exist. So I'd like to hear, Van, what is your response to that objection? Because I know you hear it all the time.
Do we have time for this? I want to.
I think we're.
Yeah, quick response.
We're at the end of. Our model is that we get the job creators, which is you guys, the job trainers, we were the educators, and the policymakers together, and that's the only way we're going to get this done. It's going to be a chicken and egg problem that's going to create, at the end of the day, a huge workforce shortage for everything we're talking about. But it can be fixed, and we love your help in fixing it.
Well, let's step back for a second. We're now having, and I don't want to be critical, we're having two of the candidates compete against free trade and against globalization. That's not the problem. The problem is that we've become so technologically efficient that we can produce a ton of steel with far fewer workers than we used to. We can produce more cars with fewer workers. So what do we need to do? We need to educate our country so it can compete in a knowledge economy. We all talk about this, but we're not demanding enough. And we've got to demand of our politicians that we have K through 12 that works. And we should have as an objective that every child has an opportunity to go to at least a 2-year college, but preferably to a 4-year college. That should be a social objective that we require in this country. We don't want to see blue-collar Americans compete with blue-collar workers in China. We're going to lose. But we do have the technology. We do have the world's best universities, and we've got to take advantage of the incredible infrastructure we've got and the native creativity and innovation that we have in this country to take advantage of that. But the fact that we've got K through 12, that we can't teach math and science in this country the way it should be, is a national scandal. We should be outraged. And one of the great things, and we talked about this at lunch, one of the great things about genetics is you will find Nobel Peace Prize winners from people who came from poor backgrounds. And if we give them the opportunity, we'll have more Nobel Peace Prize winners than if we don't give them the background. And if we're not smart enough as a society to really bring education up to where we can do it, we will lose in the global competition. And we don't want to see that happen. And we can get that done.
I am now going to join the Republican Party.
So I wanted to thank all the panelists for their time and their insights. And Mindy's just going to come up and conclude the conference. But thank you all.
Great.
Great.